Hello everyone, FPL Raptor here and welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you a Game Week 3 free hit draft that is more difficult to say than you would think, because I think it is actually a viable week to play the chip, and a lot of people don't necessarily like the way their team looks for Game Week 3, but they're not quite ready to play the wildcard. So we'll discuss all of that today and who I would pick in that free hit team. If you do enjoy today's video, please do smash that like button. If you're new around here, make sure to subscribe as well. But without further ado, let's jump into it. So guys, in today's video, I'm going to keep it nice and simple. I'm just going to show you roughly what I would go with if I were free hitting in Game Week 3. And I always say with the free hit, because you are only picking that team for 1 week, you can have fun with it. That doesn't mean picking players that aren't very good or picking tons of minutes risk, but because you don't have to own these players long term, in a wildcard or at the start of the season, I recommend being a little bit safer with it. But in a free hit, you can pick a player that has absolutely terrible data, because in a single week, anything can happen. And we have definitely seen that across the first 2 weeks as well. So absolutely pick players that you want and players that excite you, because if you're not going to do that on a free hit, when are you going to do it? I will just note, I did upload a wildcard video on Sunday, as well as my own transfer plans as well. So if you're not playing a chip, feel free to go watch what I'm doing with my team at the moment. And if you are sort of thinking, I want to play a chip, but I'm not sure if wildcard or free hit suits more, I think both are viable. But obviously feel free to go and check out that wildcard video, which was uploaded on Sunday as well. So I'm recording this late on Monday after the Liverpool-Newcastle game. Didn't go very well for me. I had Salah captain and Verts. Obviously, Salah got an assist right at the end, as he often does. But it has been a pretty terrible week. So I am very tempted to play a chip this week. And I actually said going into Game Week 1, before the season started, I actually think Game Week 3 does look pretty good for a free hit, because Arsenal and Liverpool face each other. There are lots of players that you might not own. Sorry, there are lots of teams that have good fixtures that you might not own players from. For example, I'm not saying you have to go out there investing it, but for example, Manchester United versus Burnley. Maybe you don't have any United players, but it is a good fixture. Brentford, who actually looked a lot better in Game Week 2, facing off against Sunderland. You have Forest playing West Ham, who have looked so poor in the opening too. There are actually some pretty decent fixtures to target. So not only did I already think it was a good week, and again, you can offload your Liverpool and Arsenal players if you don't want them in that fixture, then again, there could be goals. But on top of that, we've obviously had injuries to Palmer, to Ait-Nouri, to Saka, to Ruta. Lots of players have picked up injuries. But as of me recording this, none of them look particularly serious or particularly long-term. So on Saka, the latest that we had as of Monday is that it looks like it'll be 3 to 4 weeks. And on Palmer, apparently Palmer is having a scan on Tuesday. So this video will go out on Tuesday. So at the time of you watch him, you might already know the update. But let's say a lot of these players, or even if they're out for 3 to 4 weeks, after Game Week 3, we have an international break, which is 2 weeks long. Obviously, the period between 3 and 4. So if a player is out for 3 weeks from when they got injured in Game Week 2, they could already be back in Game Week 4. And if they're not back in 4, they could be back by 5. So it might be that you think, actually, I'm not that desperate to move these players out. And if they have a chance of being back for 4, I'd quite like them. Also, we can collect a lot more information. So rather than just wildcarding this week into a team that you're not really sure who you want to pick, free hitting kind of gives you an extra week of information, right? You can pick a fun team, you can collect another week of info, and then going into Game Week 4, it might be that you still decide to wildcard, or you might think, you know what? Some of my players in my actual team didn't perform too badly. I think I can hold off. Final thing, transfer window is still open during Game Week 3. So that might put enough of you off wildcarding as well, because it might be, for example, if Liverpool don't move for Isak, Ekatike becomes an exceptional option from Game Week 4 onwards. So there are a lot of things to think about, but all of that to say, I think a Game Week 3 free hit is perfectly viable. And if you want to go for it, because you get a second free hit this season. It's not like you need to keep it for future blanks and doubles, because you'll get that second one after Game Week 19. Let's jump into it then. So I've only got 0.1 million in the bank at the time of me making this draft. Don't fixate on that though, because I have quite a lot of money on the bench. And realistically, something as simple as just doing Porro to Van de Ven on the bench, and you have enough money to build this free hit team regardless of your team value. So in goal, I think the two keepers that I've been deciding between in this draft were Sells and Kelleher. I just decided to go for Sells and Collins rather than Kelleher and a Forest defender, just because I thought it was a bit fun. Collins is really good for DEFCON, he's decent in the air, and he's also quite lowly owned as well. So I just thought, you know what? If you can try and own some slightly more lowly owned assets in your free hit, you should absolutely try to do that. And Sells is super solid. I don't think West Ham will have too many chances against Forest, and we know that he does make a lot of saves. So I quite like the idea of having a Forest defender and a Brentford defender, and I've just gone for the Sells and Collins combination here. But if you prefer going for something like Milenkovic and Kelleher, that also works absolutely fine as well. In terms of the other defenders, at the moment, I've got Cucurella and Dorgu in the starting 11. I'll be honest, I'm recording this quite late on Monday after the Liverpool-Newcastle game. I actually had Livramento in there. And you could still make a case to have Livramento in this team. But obviously, Fabian Schär went off with a concussion injury, which means that there's a good chance he might not be available. Tonali went off. Joelinton went off. Bruno G was struggling at points through that game. I think that game took a lot out of Newcastle. And as much as their performance was really impressive throughout that game, and I was actually really impressed with them against Aston Villa in Game Week 1, if they do have several injuries or issues and low energy going into that game, maybe I'm a little bit less convinced. So let's see what happens throughout the week in terms of updates around those injuries. But if Newcastle don't have as many injuries as is first feared, I think Livramento will be a really nice option. I've been really impressed with him. I think he got the assist in the Liverpool games. So much happened, I'm not even sure now at this stage. But I think he could be really nice value. Even Fabian Schär, by the way, he's an option if the concussion protocol obviously doesn't rule him out of that game. For now, though, as a result, I managed to squeeze Cucurella into this team. Because if I'm being honest, out of all of the premium defenders in FPL so far this season, Cucurella has been the most impressive. He's got a clean sheet. He's got an assist. He could have had more. At points in Game Week 1, he was playing further forward than Palmer. He is really good in the air, by the way. His assist for João Pedro's goal came from a header. He's good for baseline bonus. He gets stuck in as well. So DEFCON is an option, and he's got a home game against Fulham. So yeah, I actually really, really like Cucurella. I think he's one of the better defenders to pick. And as much as you could just like go all out and always target the very best fixtures, having a fixture like Fulham at home isn't the end of the world. So yeah, Cucurella is in. And then I'll be honest, I'm going to hold my hands up. I have triple Manchester United in this draft. People will say that it's biased. It's absolutely not biased. I guarantee any person, whoever they support, would have, if they're creating content, 3 Man United assets against Burnley. It's just the fixture. You might look at it and say, I think Man United are absolutely shocking. I think they'll concede. They'll barely score. I don't want them. Absolutely fine. That might work in your favour because then you can differentiate. But I just look at Patrick Dorgu. He's so incredibly attacking. You would imagine that Burnley do have limited chances in this game. And it's about as good as you can hope for a fixture for a defender. So I've got Dorgu in there. I think De Ligt has been really, really good so far, by the way. He'll be better for defensive contributions if he gets them. And he's also not bad in the air. Kind of same with Lenny Yoro, by the way. But I just think Dorgu from open play is probably the one. I've then got Pedro Porro on the bench. You could definitely 100% justify putting Porro in there because along with Cucurella and probably Munoz, they have, I think for me, been the 3 most impressive sort of 5.5 and above defenders. So yeah, even Munoz, by the way, against Aston Villa, you could make an argument for. But I just think the other 3 for now sneak in ahead. So that's the defense. Is there anyone that I've really missed? There's no one really outside of those 4. And then I did think about putting Munoz in that has had a chance of sneaking in. And again, Livramento as well. So yeah, I think it's nice and straightforward. Let's move on to the midfield. So guys, moving on to the midfield, and I actually found this probably the trickiest part of the free hit to build, because with the defense, like I said, I pretty much only mentioned like 5 or 6 defenders, and realistically, other than defenders from the same team where you could differentiate, I've not really looked at too many others. And then when you see the front 3 in a second, it pretty much picked itself. There are some other differentials you could go for, such as Richarlison or Thiago, but really, the 3 that I've picked just look so solid. Whereas in the midfield, let's go under the assumption that you don't want to have Salah in because you're free hitting. As much as Arsenal could concede goals, they've been pretty solid so far this season. And let's also go under the assumption that Palmer and Saka are at the very least doubts and we don't expect them to play in Game Week 3. Then you're basically saying you don't have any premium midfielders to choose from. So yeah, you've got sort of Fernandes and below to choose for in your team. Now, I know Fernandes won't be for everyone and we'll discuss him in a second, but that means you've got tons of really cheap assets, but also no real standouts. I don't see any players that I'm like, you absolutely have to have them in your free hit. And I think that's very exciting because it gives you so many options. So as things stand, the 5 midfielders that I've chosen are Kudus, Cunha, Fernandes, Dango Ouattara, and Barnes. Again, I made the graphics before the Liverpool-Newcastle game. In this team, in the starting 11, rather than Cucurella and Kudus, I had Livramento and Gordon. Gordon, of course, has to be taken out, given that he got sent off and he'll be suspended for 3 games. So Gordon couldn't be in there. And Livramento, like I say, you could potentially keep him in. I still think I would be tempted by a Newcastle attacker, Elanga or Barnes, or by the way, Osula, if it looks like he'll start as the 9, could be a decent shout on free hit. I'm just a little bit worried again. That game took a lot out of them. Lots of players went off injured. I don't know exactly how they'll set up. If it is Barnes, Oshula, and Alanga, is that still the fully functioning attack that you would want? I'm a little bit hesitant. So for that reason, I've still picked Barnes, but he's currently on the bench. And then Kudus comes into the starting 11. On Kudus, I've been incredibly impressed by Spurs and Thomas Frank. Kudus does very much feel like the Brian Mbeumo of Spurs for Thomas Frank. He's using him in a very similar role on that right-hand side. He's in the 3-5-2 that he occasionally plays. It'll be the second striker alongside Richarlison or Solanke. He's taking set pieces as well. Not all of them. He's sharing some of them with Porro. But he's basically, like I say, playing that very, very similar role to what we saw Mbeumo play. And his minutes have been really secure too. My only concern with Kudus is over the first 2 games, he's not really shown much goal threat. I think he sat at 0.06 XG. You kind of need a little bit more from that. You can't just rely on assists like you got in Game Week 1. But I think in games like this at home, he will get opportunities. I don't expect to have him putting up poor data like that from a goal threat perspective all season long. So yeah, I really like Kudus. I don't think that he doesn't overly excite me in a free hit, given again, Bournemouth at home, there are definitely better fixtures to target. So if you wanted to put a Barnes in there instead, if you wanted to put an Alanga in there, or even someone like a Gibbs White you could go for against West Ham at home, another really good player. There are tons of others, I'll try and think as I'm talking through this, that you could choose in the midfield spots. I would have double Manchester United attack. And this isn't bias. It's just targeting the fixture, like I say. It's Burnley at home. It feels weird building a free hit where you wouldn't pick 3 Man United players. And I just don't think you can pick 2 United defenders, given that we are still really susceptible to conceding chances. Fulham put up almost 2 XG against United. So I think Dorgu already feels like quite a lot in the defence. I couldn't have a second. I've gone Cunha and Fernandes here. Mateus Cunha has been our best attacker so far this season in terms of flair, in terms of his ball carrying ability. He's hit the post, obviously, in Game Week 2. He also had another really big chance as well where he had a one-on-one. It was a great save by Leno. Cunha so far has been the asset that looks most promising from an FPL perspective, even more than Bruno. My thinking, though, around this is that as a result, I've got to put Cunha in there. It would feel weird not to put Cunha in there because of how good he has looked. But in terms of positioning, Mbeumo for me is the one that looks to be in more promising and threatening positions. That hasn't resulted in tons of chances so far, but Cunha does what Bruno Fernandes does. Cunha drops deep quite often. He picks up the ball. He likes to go on runs. But if you're watching Man United, as much as he is the one that at the moment is starting as the 9, he's also dropping very deep. And I do wonder if Sesko were to start this game, would he do that even more? Because then again, at least you have a number 9 that stood up there. So I think Cunha will be a lot of the assister before the assist, right? Or the assist before the assister. He'll be the one putting a beautiful through ball to Mbeumo, who might then square it to Sesko. I think we'll see that a lot with him. Whereas Mbeumo's not really getting as involved in the game, but he's sort of maintaining his position a little bit higher up the pitch. Also, Mbeumo is taking all in-swinging set pieces from the right-hand side, whereas Cunha, I don't think anyway, from eye test anyway, I've not looked at the data, I don't think he's taking any set pieces. It's Bruno on the left, or it's Mbeumo on the right. So for that reason, I just think positioning-wise, routes to points, I feel like Mbeumo might have a bit more, but Cunha has just been so brilliant, and he's come so close on at least 3 or 4 occasions, I've just had to put him in there. Hopefully that makes sense. So the argument could be, do you actually get rid of Bruno Fernandes and go for Cunha and Mbeumo instead if you wanted 2 United attackers? The reason I've got Bruno in there is just, again, he feels like he's got a very high floor. And I say that off the back of 2 blanks. But because he's very good for defensive contributions, he was obviously 1 off in Game Week 1, and then in Game Week 2, he manages to cross it. We think he'll still be on penalties, given how good his record is. He's on the set pieces, and as much as he is playing deep, he's still very creative, and he will still get chances to score goals, especially in a game like this. Bruno Fernandes is not going to sit deep and just spray passes all game. He'll be getting forward quite a lot. So I just think he's got so many routes to points that I would want to have him in my team. But like I say, you could make an argument for Mbeumo or Cunha. Just on the penalty thing, obviously it was a terrible penalty. Mbeumo, I believe, has scored 11 and missed 1 penalty in terms of his penalty record in his career. Cunha has scored 7 and missed 2. But Cunha's only taken 2 penalties in the last 4 years or something like that. It's not a lot of penalties. So I think if Fernandes were to be taken off them, which I don't think will be the case, I still think he's first choice, I think it would be more likely to be Brian Mbermo that takes the penalty ahead of Mateus Cunha. It could also be game state. Like if Cunha wins the penalty, maybe he'll take it, for example. But that's my thought process around it right now. Some of you would have just watched that thinking, I don't want to pick Man United players anyway, which is absolutely fine. But for me, I would have a couple. Those are the two that I've chosen. And then the final spot in the starting 11 is Dango Ouattara, who I thought had a really, really, really good debut against Aston Villa. And we saw at points last season, this man can score goals and put up really good data. He had a 23-pointer last season in something like 68 minutes. And then he came off. He had 3 goals and an assist, I believe it was. So this is a man that knows how to find the back of the net, is Premier League proven, has a ridiculously turn of pace. He's so fast. We saw that again in Game Week 2. I think he could do really, really well for Brentford, and I think he's going to be the perfect signing for them. And Sunderland, as much as I've been impressed at points so far in their limited minutes that they've had in the Premier League, I would be very, very tempted to have an attacker from Brentford. You could go, like I say, for Thiago in the sort of number 9 role, if Wissa's not involved, and even if he is, probably on penalties, Thiago. I just think Dango is a little bit exciting. And again, you can sort of have the ability to just have a little punt, I guess, on a free hit. So I've gone for Dango in that spot. But there are more midfielders. One midfielder, I remembered, Ndoye of Forest. Obviously, a goal and an assist so far this season. You could definitely put I think Gibbs White or Ndoye had a very good chance of getting in, as well as Barnes or Elanga. So if you wanted to replace one of your United players, or you wanted to replace a Dango or Kudus, I would go a Newcastle attacker or a Forest attacker. Let me know if you think there's anyone I've missed. I mean, there are other players like Anderson, Reinders at the cheaper price if you feel like you want to go for them. But I think on a free hit, I would try and differentiate from the normal teams as much as possible. So yeah, that's the midfield. Kudus, Cunha, Fernandes, Dango, and then Barnes on the bench. Let's take a look at that front 3. So guys, just before we move on to the front 3, a little request. If you've enjoyed today's video and you want more content throughout the season, or maybe if you've seen a few of my videos and you're not yet subscribed, could I please ask you to consider subscribing? Completely free for you to do, takes 10 seconds. You can always change your mind at a later date if you're like, I don't like this guy's content anymore. That's absolutely fine, but it really does support me. So yeah, if you've enjoyed the video so far, please do drop a like and subscribe. I've asked for 2 things there. Do both, why not? On the front 3, I found this relatively straightforward. I've got Erling Haaland, who currently has the armband because I'm still not fully trusting of Manchester United. And then I've got Chris Wood and João Pedro. Haaland, Wood and João Pedro, funnily enough, was also the front 3 that I suggested on my wildcard video on Sunday. So I think if you're free hitting or if you're wildcarding this week, I would be very tempted to pick Haaland, Wood, João Pedro. You could definitely justify, by the way, picking Mohamed Salah instead of Haaland. I just think that Brighton looks a little bit suspect against Everton. I also think that City, in Game Week 1, looked really impressive. In Game Week 2, they looked pretty poor, but they did still create 2 big chances in that game and 1.55 XG. So I think overall, they're still attacking quite well, and I would expect them to score a few goals in this game. So I back Erling Haaland to still be one of the better captaincy options. And so, yeah, I've got him in for that reason. And then Chris Wood and João Pedro, like I say, long-term or short-term, these two feel like they will offer really, really good value. On Chris Wood, it's more the fixture for me here, because I think in a single week, you could definitely back against Chris Wood. His ownership isn't that low. There are other really exciting players you could pick, but West Ham right now feels like one of the best fixtures that you can target. And again, it being at home at the City ground, I fancy Forest to do quite well here. So yeah, Chris Wood is in for that reason. And just the nature of the way that Forest play, often not that many goals. Chris Wood doesn't really have many negative actions in the bonus. He's also really good for bonus points normally if he does grab a goal or 2. So yeah, Chris Wood, I think, a very safe pick on the free here. And with João Pedro, I'm working right now under the assumption that Palmer is not available for Game Week 3. And if that's the case, João Pedro should not only be the main man playing in that number 10 role, you'd imagine again with Delap as the 9, but he should also be on penalties. Small chance Delap takes one, but João Pedro's got a great penalty record. And the way that he played in that game against West Ham, he was saying, I am the main man, right? It was very talismanic, that performance. He was dropping deep to pick up the ball. He was the one running in behind. It was just overall really, really impressive from him. And we know on his day, he's brilliant. I don't think anyone's ever thought anything other than him being brilliant on his day for João Pedro. He's just a little bit hit and miss and a bit inconsistent. But I think you can back that for a Game Week 3 free hit. So yeah, those 3, I just put them in immediately and then I didn't really look elsewhere. I think if you are trying to be a bit different, you could take a risk on a Sesko start if we get a leak or if Amarim says something in the press or you just think this is the game that he starts. But bear in mind, he's not going to play more than about 60, 65. If he does start, it will be Mason Mount coming on for him or something similar. Maybe even Xerxes, who was on the bench. So I probably wouldn't do that. But if you want to have a bit of fun, you can. Like I said, if you don't want to go for Dango, but you want a Brentford attacker, you could look at Thiago. I think he's an absolutely fine pick too. You could even pick other players that don't have the perfect fixture, like Watkins or Mateta. The other player that I quite like is Richarlison, who is playing incredibly well right now. If I'm giving a shout out to Kudus, I have to give a shout out to Richarlison, who has arguably been Spurs' most impressive player across the first two in terms of attacking. So yeah, if you are still feeling pretty confident that Solanke won't start, Richarlison's fine. The reason Richarlison isn't in here for me is he's played less than 75 minutes in both games. I would rather pick a player that I think will stay on the pitch for slightly longer. So yeah, like I say, there are options. Even Osula, like I said, if it looks like he'll start as the 9 for Newcastle. But Haaland and Wood and João Pedro, for me, they just feel better than all of the other players that I've just listed. So yeah, this team feels like it has a really good balance. So to read it out once more, Sells in goal, Cucurella, Dorgu, Collins, a midfield 4 of Kudus, Cunha, Fernandes and Dango, and a front 3 of Haaland, Wood and João Pedro. It's got a lot of safe options in there. It's got penalty takers as well. You'd imagine what Fernandes probably is on pens. Then you've got Haaland, Wood, and João Pedro in there. You've got a couple of exciting picks or slightly different picks in there. You could say a Cunha, a Dango, a Dorgu are slightly different to what you would see in a normal team. You've targeted the fixtures. I don't think it's missing too much. You are obviously missing Mohamed Salah. If you wanted to squeeze him in, you absolutely could. I'd love to know what you think of this free hit team down below. If you are activating the free hit or if you're tempted and you've at least built a draft, let me know how much your draft differs from this. If there are any players that you think I've not mentioned today, I'd be very keen to hear them. And like I said, if you are thinking about wildcarding as well, or you just want to see what I'm thinking about at this early stage with my team, I uploaded 2 videos on Sunday. One was a wildcard video, one was a transfer plans video, so feel free to check them both out. So guys, there you have it. That is my Game Week 3 free hit draft. I am a little bit tempted, but I think for me, I'm probably more likely to wildcard if I play a chip this week. If you are on the free hit, like I said, let me know down below in the comments how much it differs from your team. And if you've got to this point and you're not yet subscribed, please do consider subscribing. And if you've not yet dropped a like on the video, it really does help me out. Just hit that thumbs up. Let's aim for 2,000 likes here on this video. Until next time, thank you very much. Bye-bye.